Hi, good morning. Sorry, running a little bit late today. Got a bit caught up with stuff and lost track of time. So I've got a lot of questions to get through today, so I'm going to get stuck straight into it. I'm going to start with the ones that aren't about our topic of discussion today, so that by the time everyone comes in, we should be ready to get on with that. Okay, so let's start. First question. You mentioned that you were changing aspects of Buried and Forgotten. Are you changing a lot or just little aspects like curtains? There's going to be scenes which have a lot more into them. For example, the nightclub massacre. I've definitely put a lot of work into that last night to give it a lot more detailed description so that all of you feel the need to vomit by the time Mess does as well. So, yay. Other parts of it, I'm just basically doing plot smoothing and getting things sorted so that it flows nicely. I mean, the first time I wrote it, what everyone else, those who have read it already before, have read the very first draft raw from my head, not even spell checked. So this is going to be edited and hopefully I'll fix up those plot issues where things weren't explained well enough the first time, and definitely give a bit more explanation to that, especially the epilogue where everyone got a bit confused about who it was at the end of the book and whether those memories should be there, etc. So it's those sort of things that I'm going to be fixing up in the book. But yeah, other than that, just fixing up the detail and getting a bit more descriptive in it. For those of you who aren't aware and missed all my notifications yesterday, Of Shadow and Light is now available on Radish to start reading. It will be updated 3 times a week, every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. So go check it out if you haven't read it already. And just to confirm, Of Shadow and Light is the new name of what Buried and Forgotten used to be. So Buried and Forgotten was the working title at the time. Okay, excellent. Moving on, next question. Actually, not so much a question as just something that I want to bring up. Today's topic is around the Angelis Series, so book 1 Spectra and book 2 Wraith, which I'm still working on. It's taking me forever. There is a discussion group or a fan group of Spectra and the Angelis Series. You should definitely go check it out if you've read Spectra and you really liked it. It's called Have Raided Arms, which is French for Haven of the Damned. And basically that's the name of Mercury's nightclub, or Mercury's club or facility that we get to see in Wraith. So go check it out, have conversations with other fans. I quite often check in on what's being written there. So if you're having those conversations and bringing up things that interest you and asking questions, it's more likely to actually prompt the muse to get in and write it and get it finished. So the more you talk about it, the more you ask questions about it, the more I'm more likely to damn well finish the book, because the muse will actually start thinking about it as well. So get on there and start having conversations. Help me out here. Okay, next question. I've gone through all the questions today and put numbers beside them so that they're sort of a bit in line with each other as they come through, okay? So how far have you gotten with the next book in the Spectra series? So Wraith is currently sitting at 18,000 words, and that's relatively about 4 chapters that is done, plus a prologue. That's as far as I've got. That's basically what I wrote during NaNoWriMo last year, and that was only half of NaNoWriMo because the first half of NaNoWriMo was finishing off book 4 for the Hierarch series. So I really want to get back into it and spend some more time working on it. It is just finding that time that's proving difficult. So definitely get on Have Raided Arms and start talking about it. Get asking questions, because that will get the muse thinking about it. Already the questions that I've received over the last week has got the muse thinking about it. Unfortunately, they're relating to something that's a bit further down the track, And so we're not ready to write that yet. I just need to finish the scene that I was working on, and then I can get to that next part. So, yeah. Anyway, is there anything you can tell us about Wraith where it won't give away the plot twist? Yes, there's plenty I can tell you about Wraith. So the first thing I can tell you is that a lot of people were curious about who Spectra's protector was in book 1, and you will actually meet her protector in the prologue of book 2. So it's actually seen from that person's I gave it away anyway, from that person's perspective. But you actually meet another character in the prologue of book 2 who you need to look out for, okay? So while that person won't feature much in book 2, they're going to be someone to look out for going forward, because while you're not seeing that person because the book is from Spectra and Bay's point of view, and they may not necessarily be seeing that person, doesn't mean that person isn't on the scene. That's all I'm going to say to that. What else can I tell you about? There's a wedding. Very upfront in the book, there is a wedding. Essence are still our problem, our obstacle in this series. Well, they're going to be the ongoing obstacle for most of the series. And we have a new member of Essence causing trouble in book 2. At least one. There's actually 2 members of Essence on the scene. One that you don't really get to see until the end. So, yes, anyway, Essence are still our issue, and they're still after the cure. Everything revolves around that cure. There's going to be a lot more on Mercury and Spectra's relationship and why they have the sort of relationship they do. I'm trying to be careful not to give away things that aren't in, that if you haven't read book 1 would spoil it for you. But there's going to be a lot of focus around the Angelis and how their powers work and what impact that has on Spectra's and Mercury's relationship, which should explain, for those people who aren't happy with the relationship, should explain why it is there. I don't think, if you're the sort of person who didn't like how the end of book 1 finished, then it's probably not going to matter about this, that's the sort of relationship that's there and this is why it's there, but it will be explained a bit more in book 2. So that's all I can really tell you about book 2 as a general overarching thing right at the point in time. Next question. You keep saying that Wraith is a hard series to write about because of the world building. Is there still more to this world that you haven't added? I don't know if it's so much the world building, because they live within the human world. So the Nachtwelt is a hidden society almost, or existence within our world. It's very much an urban fantasy that way, in the fact that it's still based in the here and now. It's modern times. It's as if you could walk outside and they're all around you, but you just don't notice them. So it's not so much the world building, because the world building is the same as ours, but it's their world building in the fact that despite the fact they live in our world, they have different laws, different rules, different social statuses, different interactions, different ways of feeding, different ways of existing. There's very different political machinations going on in these people's heads, in these characters, and their reasonings for the way they live is very different to ours, because of their powers, because of the difference between a predator and the others. So it's it's all those sort of things that make it a little bit more complex, in the fact that I'm not just creating a new world where anything goes. I'm having to create a world within our world and make sure that their actions wouldn't impact on our world to a point that we would notice and it would create issue, if that makes sense. So they have to be very subtle in the way they move through things, or they have to have ways of covering up, you know, killing people and eating them and things like that. So it's those sort of traits and those laws that they live by that can be quite complex in building it sometimes for me, and just all the politics of it, especially when you're dealing with the ranking, social elite, etc., like that. So yeah, that's what makes it a bit more complex, and just understanding their motivations for why they do things. Like there's a lot of questions here about Alexander, so I'm going to bring up Alexander. Why Alexander treated Spectra the way he did. Why did he move away from their relationship when he was in love with her, just because he became L'Ordre? So it's those sort of understandings that can make this book difficult for me, or not so much difficult, just frustrating, because it's not just enough for me to know it. I have to try and explain it to the reader, because the readers aren't psychic. They're not going to understand what's happening in my head and what I can see clearly. And because it's seen from other people's perspectives, it doesn't necessarily translate on the page to clearly why that person is doing that. So it's trying to explain things without over-explaining and without under-explaining, and just frustrates the hell out of me sometimes, because I am not good at that sort of stuff all the time. And I know that's where my writing falls down, which is why it's so great to have beta readers who will sit there going, I didn't understand this, can you explain that a little bit better for me? And then I can get in there and try and give it a bit more explanation, because I know if they're confused and they're used to my writing, then someone who's new to my writing and picks it up for the first time is definitely going to be a lot more confused. So those are the things that frustrate me in trying to better my writing, I guess, and make this world a world where the reader can understand it and not just get as frustrated in not understanding it and throw it away as well. Okay. In book 2 of the Spectra series, Alexander finds out that Spectra is married. Will Alexander find out Spectra is married? If so, will we read the moment as he finds out, and will it be explosive? Yes, very early in the book, like I'd like to say about maybe by chapter 6, chapter 7, Alexander will find out that Spectra is married. And he is going to be present in Spectra's presence when he finds out that she is married. And Mercury will also be there, and Bay will also be there, and so will Henry. And Alexander is definitely going to lose his cool. And in that moment, we're going to see why a male Angelis is a thing to be feared by everyone in the Nachtwelt. Why most people leave the Angelis and the Nephilim to themselves, and even the predators don't really cause issues with them. So, yes, it should be a very good scene. In book 2 of Spectra series, will Alexander find out that Spectra was always strong enough for him? So I should probably preference with this, there's going to be some spoilers in the next few questions if you haven't read book 1, okay? So will Alexander find out that Spectra was strong enough for him? I'm going to hold on that one, because I think it has the same answer to the one that's down the very next question. So I'm going to read that question first, and then I'll answer both of them together. Will Alexander find out that Spectra had unprotected sex with Bay? And if he does, will he know in book 2? Okay, so the answer to both of those questions about Alexander discovering A, how powerful Spectra is, and B, that she has been intimate with Bay and has basically wed her body to Bay and become his balance, is that there will be a situation in book 2, towards the end of book 2, that has a relationship between Bay and Spectra take place, or an interaction between them that takes place, that just happens to get caught on video. I'm going to leave that there. Whether that video is seen by certain people before the end of book 2 or as an epilogue in book 2, the outcome will be definitely there in book 3. So I'm not going to say that Alexander definitely knows at the end of book 2. I'm just going to say that there is a situation at the end of book 2 which will lead to Alexander finding out by book 3 or in book 3. That's all I'm going to say on that one, because I think I've already given too much away, but I don't want to give too much away, okay? But so that one's a bit hard to answer because I'm not quite sure when he's going to come across that discovery, but there will be evidence there that will highlight the situation to him, but no one is going to be telling it to him. And even though it's been in his face a couple of times now, the situation with Alexander is that in his head, Spectra was not strong enough. He's in love with her. Their souls are tied together, but in his head, she's not strong enough. And so it doesn't, even in book 1, there were many times when it should have been evident to him that she was strong enough, because in his head, he believes so strongly she's not, and he's distanced himself from her and caused the break in their relationship because he didn't believe that she was. He's actually not willing to comprehend what he's actually witnessed that would tell him she was. So even in book 2 that continues, his focus now is on the fact that she has gone and married someone else, that she's having this relationship with someone else, and it obviously means that that relationship existed before now, and he realizes that that was happening for a long period in the background that he didn't even realize. So he's starting to realize that there were things happening in Spectra's life, but he's still hung up on the fact that in his mind, Bay was the reason that she nearly died and that she got kidnapped in the last book. And that there is someone else in her life, and that she's ended her relationship with him. So he's hung up on those two things right now, and he can't get past that to see what's been in his face all the way along. Okay. Next question. Do you have a dream? So we're now finishing up with Wraith, and we're just moving on to the general questions, so I'll do them really quickly. Do you have a dream that you still wish to achieve? Would you like to see a specific book become a movie? One of yours, of course. I do have many dreams. The problem with fulfilling one dream is that you automatically end up with a new goal in life. So when I first started writing, my first goal was just to have people read my books and enjoy them. I've reached that. I've had people do it. I've had many people reach out to me and tell me how much they love my books, which has been fantastic. My next dream was to get published. And last year I published 7 books in a year, 2 of which became bestsellers on Amazon. So another tick in the box. Right now I would love to definitely grow a bigger fan base, maybe even, I don't know, one day end up on the Times bestsellers list. I mean, that'd be fantastic. However, I'm a very realistic person in the fact that there are so many indie authors out there. There are so many authors out there doing great work. that the potential of me getting there, you know, is probably the same as winning lotto right at the point in time. I'm a fairly unknown author. So if you have friends who read, etc., definitely go out and share my work with them, because I have more chance of making it by word of mouth than I do with anything else. So spread the word, spread the love. About the movie, yeah, I'd love to see one of my books become a movie. Initially, when I wrote the Hierarch series, my friends used to always talk about how detailed and visual it was, in the fact that while they were reading it, they could actually imagine it as a movie playing on the screen in front of them. And we've quite often talked about that one being picked up by Netflix or HBO, because let's face it, it would have to be a HBO sort of series. So we've quite often talked about that one getting picked up. I'd love to see Spectra get picked up and either get made into a movie or, again, be a Netflix original, because I think that would definitely transfer well to the screen. I think Black Mark would make a great Netflix series or a movie series. I think the hotel series would be great to be picked up by someone like Passionflix or Netflix or someone like that. So I'd love to see any of my work picked up and put on the screen for everyone else to enjoy. If it happens, it happens. It'd be fantastic. I'd be overjoyed by it. I just have to sit and wait and hope that my readership builds to a point where I do get discovered that way and someone's willing to take a risk on my work and actually make it into a series. Right now, though, most of those sort of TV and movie situations go to people who make the Times bestsellers list or have a huge cult or fan following to the point where they've sold millions of books. So that's not me, unfortunately, where I sit now. But I'd love it to be there one day. Last question. Do you read books similar to what you write? That one's a yes and no sort of answer, in the fact that I do read paranormal, I do read romance, not the sort of flowery romance. I very much like suspense romance, if anything. I don't necessarily have to have a couple together at the end of a book, but I need there to be a good reason if they're not, and not just some cheap cop-out. The reason I say there's sort of a no equivalent to that is because I do write quite differently, and my idea about the paranormal world, about romance, is quite different to the standard cliche sort of ideas that are out there. So if I was going to compare my stories to anyone, it was definitely going to be to Rachel Vincent, who I love her work. She's so original in her ideas and the way she presents them, that I think she's a fantastic writer, and we're sort of similar in the way in that we take what would be a cliche idea and we adapt it to our way of thinking and our understanding of it and create a totally different sort of world around it. I also really like Mary Ravenel's writing, again, in the same aspect that she has a great imagination, a very different imagination to the standard that's out there. Fantastic writer, again, who really knows how to draw you into her worlds. And again, that's someone that I sort of feel a resonance with in the way that my stories go and I write. So yes, I read within the genres. I also read outside of the genre. I do read a lot of young adult books. And I also read fantasy and myth. I love myth. But it's the fact that finding writers who are on an equivalent level with my imagination or the way I like to present stories is not actually a very common thing. And that's because publishers, traditional publishers, don't take risk. They know what they like, what most people like as the standard, as the cliche, and that's what they stick to, that's what they publish. They very rarely take the risk on a new way of writing a paranormal world, or on a romance that, you know, doesn't necessarily have the stock standard formula of they meet, there's an obstacle, they fall in love, they get over it, they get married, they have 20 children. So I would say the reason I'm not able to read as much that is as similar to my writing is because traditional publishers don't take risks on writers like me who present a different way of thinking about things. Basically, they're like the education system. Let's not do anything different. Let's not try and make things better. Let's stick to what's been working for the last 500 years. Anyway, so that's all I have. Again, Shadow and Light is now starting on Reddish. First episode went up last night. They're not shortish chapters, so yep, make some time to read it, get in there, and that's all I have for you right now. Don't forget to get on Have Rated Dams, have conversations with other fans, ask questions about Spectra, about Wraith, ask questions about the characters, ask questions about the world. It will get the muse thinking, which in turn gets her writing. So the sooner you want that book to come out means you have to get on to the Have Rated Dams and ask me the questions. You can find the link for that Facebook group in the event series for today. And yeah, that's it. That's it for this week. I've gone well over time. There was lots of questions to get through. I've already set up the event for next week's Quickie, so if you have questions, this topic is going to be the Hotel series, which of course most of you who are following that one knows that it's now being extended into Jess's world. So get on, ask questions about the Hotel series, ask questions about Jess and Ethan, ask questions about Holly, Sean, Benjamin, Trisha, Mitchell. Ask questions, I'll answer, and it will also get me thinking. Okay, fantastic, lovely talking to you. Thanks for tuning in, those of you who did. And I shall see you all again next week. Happy reading.